The price of welcome. The day humanity joined the Galactic Council, the skies above every city burned with celebration. Fireworks erupted in colors no human eye had ever seen before. Gifts from the Valari, Earth's first allies among the stars. They were a peaceful species, tall and luminous, their skin shimmering like starlight on water. They had found humanity drifting at the edge of explored space and had done something no other species dared. They spoke to us as equals. For 10 years, the Valari taught us. They shared their technology, their history, their warnings. They told us the Galactic Council was not what it seemed, that beneath its grand halls and diplomatic smiles lay something ancient and cruel. But humanity was young, eager, and hopeful. We believed we could change things from within. The council chambers floated above the capital world of Arcanus Prime, a structure so vast it had its own gravity. Representatives from 100 species gathered there, each more alien than the last, and among them for the first time stood humanity's ambassador, a woman named Dr. Ilara Venn, chosen not for her strength, but for her kindness. She believed in unity. She believed in peace. She believed in the council. The vote came without warning, a motion to dissolve the Valari delegation. No explanation, no trial, just a simple majority vote carried out in silence. Dr. Venn stood and objected, her voice trembling with disbelief. But the council did not respond. They simply moved on to the next agenda item, as if an entire civilization had not just been erased from the record. Within 3 days, the Valari homeworld went dark. Captain Arya Solon was the first to see it. Her reconnaissance ship, the Nightingale, had been patrolling the neutral zone when the distress signal came through. Fragmented, desperate, dying. She ordered an immediate jump, and what she found would haunt her forever. The Valari homeworld was gone, not destroyed, erased. The planet itself remained, but every city, every structure, every living thing had been reduced to dust. The oceans were still. The forests were ash. And in orbit, silent and watching, was a council enforcement fleet. They did not fire on the Nightingale. They did not need to. The message was clear. This is what defiance costs. Arya's hands shook as she transmitted the images back to Earth. She expected outrage. She expected war. What she got was silence. The Council had sent an official statement. The Valari had violated the Accord of Unity. Their removal was regrettable but necessary. Humanity's delegation voted in favor of accepting this explanation. Arya didn't believe it. Neither did Admiral Marcus Hale. Hale was a relic of Earth's old wars, a man who had fought in the unification conflicts and understood what empires did when they believed themselves untouchable. He called Arya to his flagship, the Defiant Dawn, and showed her something no one else had seen, a data core, Valari in origin, delivered to him in secret by a dying Valari scientist who had escaped the Purge. Inside were files, thousands of them, records of Council surveillance dating back centuries. Before humanity ever left its solar system, before we built our first warp drive, the Council had been watching. They had sabotaged our probes. They had seeded false signals into our telescopes. They had delayed our discovery of FTL travel by nearly 100 years. And they had done the same to every species that showed too much independence, too much curiosity, too much courage. They don't want allies, Hale said, his voice low and cold. They want subjects. Arya stared at the files, her heart pounding. Then why let us in at all? Because we passed their test, Hale replied. We stayed quiet, we obeyed. We let them kill our friends and said nothing. Arya's jaw tightened. Then we failed. Hale nodded. Yes, but it's not too late to fix that. Over the next month, Arya and Hale worked in secret. They reached out to those they trusted, captains who had served with them, scientists who had questioned the Council's technology, diplomats who had seen the cracks in the facade. Slowly, carefully, they built a network, and then they found the others. The Kyle, the Rethan, the Sorvani, species that had been labeled as extinct or integrated by the Council. Species that had been crushed for the same crime as the Valari, defiance. But some had survived, hidden in the dark corners of the galaxy, waiting for a spark. Humanity was that spark. The call went out across every human colony, every fleet, every station. Admiral Hale's voice echoed through the void, calm and unshakable. We were welcomed into the stars with a lie. We were told we had earned our place. But the truth is, we were never meant to rise. We were meant to kneel. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. The Valari gave everything to help us, and we repaid them with silence. That ends now. The United Terran Fleet will no longer serve the Council. We will no longer bow to tyrants, and we will no longer stand by while the innocent are erased. Across human space, engines roared to life. Ships that had been decommissioned were brought back online. Factories that had built peace now built weapons. And every man, woman, and child who could hold a tool, fly a ship, or stand a watch stood ready. The Galactic Council had ruled for 10,000 years. Humanity had been free for less than one. But freedom, once tasted, is not easily surrendered. The retaliation of Earth had begun. The chains we break, the Council did not expect resistance. For 10 millennia they had crushed rebellion before it could take root, snuffed out independence before it could spread. When the first human fleet refused to respond to their recall order, the Council dismissed it as a minor insurrection. When the second fleet joined them, they called it a mistake. When the 10th fleet arrived, they finally understood. Humanity was not asking for mercy. Humanity was declaring war. The Battle of the Threshold Gate was the first true test. The gate itself was a marvel, an ancient structure built by the Council's founding species, capable of opening stable wormholes across the galaxy. It was the key to their power, the arteries of their empire, and Admiral Hale intended to sever it. The Defiant Dawn led the charge, flanked by 100 human warships and twice as many retrofitted cargo haulers turned into armed transports. They were outnumbered 5-1. The Council's defense fleet was legendary. Ships older than Earth's oldest cities, weapons that could crack moons, shields that had never fallen. But the Council had forgotten something. Humanity had spent 10 years learning from the Valari, and the Valari had spent their last days preparing humanity for this moment. All ships, Hale commanded, his voice steady. Engage Protocol Starfall. The human fleet scattered, moving in patterns that defied conventional tactics. They didn't fight like soldiers. They fought like survivors. Every ship was a distraction, every maneuver a feint. And while the Council fleet tried to track them, the Nightingale, piloted by Arya Solon, slipped through the chaos like a shadow. She carried the Valari's final gift, a virus. Not biological, but digital. A code so elegant, so perfectly crafted, that it could infiltrate Council systems without being detected. It didn't destroy, it revealed. Arya's hands danced across the controls as she approached the gate's central hub, dodging fire from automated defenses. She uploaded the virus in a single burst transmission and pulled away, her ship screaming through the void. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, across the entire galactic network, every screen, every data stream, every communication channel lit up with the same thing, the truth. 10,000 years of lies. 10,000 years of sabotage, manipulation, and genocide. The Council had not united the galaxy, they had enslaved it. Species that resisted were erased. Planets that refused to submit were sterilized. And all of it was hidden behind a facade of peace and prosperity. The evidence was irrefutable. The data came from the Council's own archives, encrypted and buried, but now laid bare for all to see. Across the galaxy, outrage ignited like wildfire. The Kael, thought extinct, broadcast from hidden colonies. The Rethan revealed fleets that had been hiding for centuries. The Sorvani emerged from exile, their war songs echoing through the void. And dozens of other species, some humanity had never even heard of, rose up in rebellion. The Council tried to suppress it. They tried to spin the narrative, to claim the data was fabricated, but it was too late. The cracks had become fissures, and the fissures had become chasms. And then humanity did something the Council had never seen before. They shared their weapons. Not just technology, though they shared that too, but tactics, strategies, and most importantly, hope. Human engineers worked alongside Kael fabricators to retrofit ancient ships. Human medics treated wounded Sorvani soldiers. Human diplomats brokered alliances between species that had been enemies for millennia. Dr. Ilara Venn, who had once stood alone in the Council chambers, now stood at the head of a coalition. She no longer spoke of peace through submission. She spoke of peace through justice. "We are not conquerors," she declared in a transmission that reached every corner of the rebellion. "We are not tyrants. We are the children of a world that nearly destroyed itself and chose a better way, and we will fight not to rule but to ensure that no one else is erased for daring to be free." The Council responded with force. Their core fleets converged on human space, intent on making an example of Earth. If they could crush humanity, the rebellion would collapse. But they had miscalculated. Earth was not defenseless. The Sol system had been fortified in secret, its asteroid belt seeded with mines, its moons turned into weapons platforms. And when the Council fleet arrived, they found not a cowering species but a trap. The battle raged for 3 days. Ships burned, lives were lost. But humanity did not break, and on the 3rd day, as the Council's flagship, the Eternal Sovereign, breached Earth's outer defenses, Captain Arya Solon made a choice. She flew the Nightingale directly into its path, broadcasting one final message. "This is for the Valari." Her ship collided with the flagship's reactor core, and for a brief terrible moment a new star was born above Earth. The Eternal Sovereign fell, and with it, the myth of the Council's invincibility shattered. The dawn of a new galaxy. The war did not end with a single battle. It could not. The Galactic Council was too vast, too entrenched, too ancient to fall overnight. But the fall had begun, and nothing could stop it now. Admiral Marcus Hale stood in the ruins of the Council's primary archive on Arconus Prime. The planet had been abandoned. Its population fled or defected. The grand halls that had once echoed with the voices of 100 species now stood silent, filled only with dust and ghosts. He walked through the chambers slowly, his boots echoing on the marble floors. Around him, human soldiers and allied forces cataloged the records, preserving the truth for future generations. They found horrors, mass purges, engineered famines, entire star systems sterilized. But they also found something else. Hope. Hidden among the files were records of resistance, species that had fought back and nearly won, technologies that had been suppressed because they were too dangerous to the Council's control, and most importantly, proof that the Council's founders had once believed in something better. They had been idealists once. They had built the Council to prevent the kind of galactic war that had nearly destroyed them all. But over millennia, fear had turned to control, and control had turned to tyranny. The very thing they sought to prevent, they had become. Hale closed the final archive and walked out into the light. Across the galaxy, the rebellion had transformed into something new. Not an empire, not a council, but a compact. The galactic compact of free worlds. Every species had a voice. Every world had a choice. And every decision required consensus, not decree. It was messy. It was slow. It was frustrating. It was free. Dr. Alara Venn became the compact's first mediator, not a ruler, but a guide. She spent her days traveling between worlds, helping former enemies find common ground, ensuring that the mistakes of the old council were never repeated. She often thought of the Valari. She visited their world once, walked through the ash and the silence, and wept for what had been lost. But she also planted seeds, literal ones, brought from Earth. Trees that would grow slowly over centuries, until one day the world might live again. "They're not gone," Hale told her, standing beside her in the gray wasteland. "Not as long as we remember." Ilara nodded, tears streaming down her face. "We'll make sure no one forgets. Humanity changed too. The species that had once looked to the stars with wonder now looked with wisdom. They built not just for themselves but for the galaxy. Human engineers designed ships that any species could use. Human scientists shared their discoveries freely. Human artists created works that celebrated not just their own culture, but the beauty of 100 others. And when new species were discovered, young civilizations just beginning to reach for the stars, humanity did not conquer them, or manipulate them, or delay them. Humanity welcomed them, not as subjects, not as tools. As equals, years passed, then decades. The scars of the war began to heal, though they would never fully fade. Monuments were raised on 1,000 worlds, honoring those who had fought, those who had fallen, and those who had dared to hope on Earth. In the city where the celebrations had once burned bright with Valari fireworks, a new monument was unveiled. It was simple, a sphere of polished stone orbited by 100 smaller spheres, each representing a species of the compact. And at its base, an inscription in every known language. We were given a choice, to kneel or to stand. We chose to stand not for ourselves alone, but for all who would come after. May we never forget the price of freedom, and may we never stop fighting for it. Admiral Hale lived to see the monument completed. He stood before it on the day of its dedication, old and tired but unbroken. Beside him stood Dr. Venn, and beside her a young officer, the daughter of Captain Arya Solon, who had given her life so that others might live. "Do you think she'd be proud?" the young officer asked. Hale smiled, a rare and genuine expression. "I think she'd say we still have work to do." The young officer laughed. "Then we'd better get started." As the ceremony ended and the crowds dispersed, a single ship descended from orbit. It was old, battered, and patched 100 times over, but it flew with pride, its hull painted with the symbol of the compact, a circle of stars, unbroken and united. It was the Nightingale II, captained by Arya's daughter, carrying the next generation of explorers, diplomats, and dreamers. They were heading toward the unknown regions where new species waited to be found, where new mysteries waited to be solved. And as they jumped to FTL, leaving Earth behind, a message was transmitted across the compact. "This is the United Terran Fleet. Aboard the Nightingale II. We carry the torch of those who came before us. We will not falter. We will not forget, and we will never stop reaching for the stars." The galaxy had been ruled by fear for 10,000 years, but fear, like all tyrants, could only endure as long as no one dared to resist. Humanity had dared. And in doing so, they had set the galaxy free. The retaliation of Earth was not vengeance. It was justice. It was hope. It was the dawn of a new age, and it had only just begun.